How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to an episode here on Let's Put Twitter. As always, I'm Ethan Uncutter, your favorite underqualified senior software engineer. And as always, if you guys do want access to a private repository, there's a link in the description down below that'll walk you through exactly how to get that. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and talk about what we're working on today. As you guys can see, we're not on the front end today because we're going to be doing some backend work in Java. Primarily going to be working on getting messages set up. Firstly, we need to go ahead and fix up a couple things inside of the application user. Then we're going to go ahead and make it so we can make message, upload them, and then see them in the database. And then next episode we'll go ahead and start working on getting notifications and all of those sorts of things going out. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop in here. The first thing we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go to source main java com footer. We're gonna go into our models and we're going to our application user. So it doesn't really matter where this is gonna go. What we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and add a create timestamp. I'm gonna go ahead and come down here to around line 59, just below our timestamp. I'm gonna go ahead and add at column. And this is going to have a name equal to create underscore ts for create timestamp. It's going to be a private and then local date time. I'm going to go ahead and just call this create time stamp like so. And then we just have a couple other things to update here. So let's come down here to where we have our constructor, which is a ways down here. And I'm just going to go ahead and add in the timestamp here. So I'm going to say this dot create timestamp is equal to local date time, dot now. Go ahead and just set that up for us. Now we need to just go ahead and set up a couple of getters and setters. So what I could probably do is just delete all these, but I'm going to be lazy and do it the lazy way. I'm just going to go to the bottom here, and set it up there. So I'm going to go ahead and just say public, and then this would be a local date time get, and then create timestamp, and this one just obviously return the create timestamp. And we'll also go ahead and do a public, and this will be a void, and set create timestamp. I'm sorry guys, I've been grinding all day on this. This is kind of a local date time, and we'll go ahead and just call this create time. Maybe if I could type today. Stamp, and here we'll say this dot create timestamp is equal to create timestamp. Then at the bottom here we'll go ahead and just throw the create timestamp in here. So here let's go ahead and say create timestamp equal to, and then plus, and then create timestamp plus. Got the hiccups here. So that's good to go. Now there's one more thing we have to do before we actually start up our application, because things are going to break here. Let's hop into our data.sql and actually add in those timestamps. So basically all we need to do is here in this first insert, we need to go ahead and go to the back here. I'm just going to go ahead and add create underscore ts, and I'm just going to come through all of here, and I'm going to go ahead and just say comma now like so. So I'm just going to go ahead and do all of these really quickly. You don't need to see me do this. Now that one's done, we need to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and put now on mine as well. So create underscore ts. I'm going to come down to the unknown coder one, go ahead and throw now on there. And then same thing for Jerry and Beth. Go ahead and add in the create underscore ts. Come down here to false, throw in that now for the create timestamp, and then create underscore ts. We'll go ahead and add this as well. Obviously we want this all filled out in random whenever you, not random, but you'd want it set whenever you actually create. But since this is just data we're inserting, I'm not that concerned about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and w save all. Let's go back into the application console. It probably failed at some point because it didn't have those timestamps. So let's just go ahead and rerun the application and make sure we're looking good from this standpoint. All right, it took it a while, but it ran, so that's good to go. So let's go ahead and hop back into the back end and continue working here. So next up, I want to go ahead and hop into our conversation, and we need to go ahead and add the conversation name, which is optional, along with the conversation image, which is optional, which we'll set up a little bit later on. So let's go ahead and hop into our conversation model. So here we're just going to go ahead and make this pretty simple. So below our conversation message, we're just going to go ahead and have a at column. We'll have a name equal to conversation underscore, and this is going to be name, and nullable equal to true because by default we're not going to have one, and we're going to have a private string conversation name, and then again at column maybe name is equal to conversation underscore picture, nullable will equal to true once again, and this time I'm also going to put a string for conversation picture. So conversation picture, and then we want to do as much work whenever we're going through and setting these conversation pictures up. So now all we need to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and do the lazy way. I'm just going to delete all of these. So let's go ahead and get rid of these guys because we don't have anything special in these, and I think I might have broken it. So let me just fix this. Try again. There we go. So let's go ahead and generate getters and setters. Let's go ahead and generate our constructor, which I think all we need here is the empty constructor. So I'll just go ahead and say public conversation again, like so, and then go ahead and let's do the toString. So go ahead and generate the toString. We'll include the conversation ID, users, message, name, and picture. Although nope, I guess the conversation name is okay. I think we might need to, actually no, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm sorry for getting sidetracked. We'll deal with that in what I'm thinking about in a second. Go and finish that guy up, and let's go ahead and do hash code equals. We'll go include everything, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. So now this guy is up to date, and that's good to go. And now we have a couple more models to make. So I'm gonna go ahead and say space JC, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a models. We need to go ahead and make an enum for our messages. So I'm going to go ahead and make a message type enum, and this should actually be a space JE. So let me go ahead and close out of this, space JE for enum, maybe. And this will be in our models, and then this is going to be message type. This is going to be very simple. It's either going to be a message or an action, and an action is basically going to be, hey, so-and-so did this or that. So we need basically a way to distinguish between a regular message and like when someone just updates something inside the message conversation or whatnot. Now let's go ahead and hop into our message model and actually get that fleshed out. That way we can start making messages. So this is where we left off our message last time. It's pretty bare bones just so we can go ahead and get our conversation working. So now let's go ahead and add our @generated value on here, and then our strategy will equal to generation type. Let's go ahead and set it to auto, and then we go ahead and set up everything else. So we're going to go ahead and below this, we're going to go ahead and add @enumerated, and this is going to go ahead and be enum type, and then we're going to go ahead and set ordinal. We're going to have @column, and this is going to have a name equal to message underscore type. And here we're going to have a private message type, like so. Okay. And then now underneath this, we're going to go ahead and have an @many to 1. This is going to be @join column with a name equal to sent underscore by. So who sent this specific message? This will be a private application user, and then we'll go ahead and call this sent by. Then we'll have our conversation. Our conversation we need to actually JSON ignore, otherwise we get an infinite loop. So let's go ahead and throw a JSON ignore on that guy. Next we need the text that goes along with this. So this is just going to be @column, and then we'll have a name equal to message underscore text, and this will just be a private string message text, like so. We'll have an @column for the name for sent underscore @. So what time was this sent at? This will be a private, local date string, and this will just be called sent at. We're gonna have an @many to many, and this is gonna have an @join table, maybe. And inside a join table, the name is gonna be message seen underscore by. So we're going to keep track of who has read this message. We're going to have our @join columns equal to @join column. And here, this is going to name equal to user underscore ID. So who has seen the message? We have our inverse join maybe columns equal to @join column. And here we're going to name equal to message underscore ID. So we're going to keep track of who's actually seen this. This will be private set of application users, and this is going to be called seen by. That way we can basically tell people, hey, so-and-so has seen your message or read your message, so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and import our set. Let's go ahead and import our local date string. This should be local date time, not local date string. So let's go ahead and fix that. Okay. And then join columns. Let's see what's going on here. @join column, I forgot a comma. There we go. And then finally, we're going to have an column, and this is gonna have a name equal to message underscore image. This one's gonna be optional, so nullable equal to true. We'll have to just check for that. So we have private string message image, just because it's going to make our lives a lot easier to go ahead and import that. We're going to have a couple of different constructors here. So here we're going to have a public message where this dot scene at is going to get equal to new hash set. That way we just have it set up. And we're also going to go ahead and say this dot scene at, not seen at, this should be sent at, and this should be seen by, not seen at. There we go. Seen by, and then seen at is equal, let me actually sent at, my bad, local date time dot now. So we'll go ahead and just, if we go ahead and just call nothing for the constructor, we'll at least set up those two things. We'll have a public message, and here we'll have a message type, message type. We'll have an application user sent by. We're gonna have a conversation and conversation, and finally a string message text. We're gonna go ahead and call this to go ahead and call the above one. We'll go ahead and say this dot message type is equal to message like a type. We're gonna go this dot sent by is equal to sent by. We'll go ahead and say this dot conversation to conversation. We'll say this dot message text is equal to message and text. And then we're gonna go ahead and make one more. So here we're gonna say public message, or we're basically gonna pass the same thing. So message type, message type. We'll have application user, and this is sent by. We'll have our conversation. We'll have our string message text, but this one is going to have a string message image as well. So go ahead and call this again, pass in our message type, our sent by, our conversation, maybe my fingers aren't working anymore, and our message text. And then we'll go ahead and say this dot, and then message image is equal to message image. Go ahead and just set it up like that. And let me go ahead and make sure conversation is spelled right as well. There we go. And what did I screw up? Let me just double check. Spelled conversation wrong up here as well. Of course I did. I've been typing all day, so my fingers are pretty worn down at this point. And I must have misspelled sent at. Nope, I just missed an equal. Cool. So now we can go ahead and set up getters, setters, all of that stuff. So space CA, go ahead and set up our getters and setters. Go ahead and set up our toString, which we'll go ahead and add everything to. So let's go ahead and add all the way down to our, we don't need the message IDs, so that probably just screwed everything. So I'll go ahead and delete that. Let's go ahead and get rid of this guy. We don't need him. Cool. That should be fine. And then we'll go ahead and do our hash code and equals. We'll go ahead and add everything as well. There we go. So that is good to go. That's looking good. So now that we got our message set up, we need to go ahead and set up our message repository, get our message service, and then our message controller set up. That way we can just get messages to our database. So let's go ahead and say space JI to go ahead and make an interface. Go ahead and make repositories, which I believe is where this is supposed to go. And we'll go ahead and say message repository. Right now, messages are going to be dead simple. So all we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and extends JPA repository. And then this will have our message and our integer like so. And then we need to go ahead and import our message so it stops complaining at us. Then we'll also go ahead and just throw at repository for good measures, and that's all we're doing. So we're not doing anything fancy or crazy in here. Eventually we'll have to do some updating and stuff, but right now it's basic and simple. So now let's go ahead and create our message service. So go ahead and create a class, go ahead and call this message. Actually, this is in the services, and then we'll say message service. Okay, go ahead and throw at service on there. and at transactional. And for now, we're just gonna have a private and final message repository, and we'll have at auto-wired, and we'll say public message service, and pass in our message repository. This dot message repository is equal to message repository. Cool. Right now, we're just gonna have one function: public message create message. If I could type, oh my goodness. So create message is going to take a string message payload. It's also going to take a list of multi-part files. So multi-part and then file, like so. All this files, it's really images, whatever. Today we're not going to deal with adding the images. We're going to go ahead and do that basically next episode, but we're going to go ahead and just get the message stub all good to go. So let's see what's going on here. Excuse me, hiccups. Let's import the auto-wired. Let's go ahead and import our message, and let's go ahead and import the list. I don't know why list is not showing up under util. There we go. So now it's mad at us because we're not returning anything. So now we'll just go ahead and return null. So it stops complaining. So now we have a little bit to set up. So up here, we're going to go ahead and say message will just start out equal to null. And there's a reason behind this. We'll find out next episode. But for now, we're just going to set it up like this. Try, and we'll go ahead and catch E. And then here, we'll just go ahead and e.print stack trace for now. E.print. Let's make sure we actually say exception E. This isn't JavaScript. Print stack trace. There we go. Been doing too much JavaScript. Object mapper. And this is just going to be called object mapper is equal to new object mapper. We're going to go ahead and say create message DTO. We're going to create this in a second, so don't freak out. Equal to object mapper dot read value, and then we're going to go ahead and pass in the message payload, and then we're going to go ahead and say create message DTO dot class. Like I said, the create message DTO doesn't exist yet, so let's go ahead and just create it really quick so this stops complaining. So space JC, we'll go ahead and put this in DTO, and this is going to be called create message DTO. Go ahead and create that guy. So the create message DTO is pretty simple. We're just going to have a private message type, and let's go ahead and bring in message type. We're going to have a private application user, and this is going to be called sent by. We're going to have a private and conversation. We'll have a private string text and a private string, oh my goodness, GIF URL, which we set up in the front end already. Go ahead and set up a no arg constructor. Go ahead and set up an all arg constructor. So add 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We'll go ahead and just do our getters and setters. And let's also go ahead and import our application user because this is complaining. Let's just go ahead and make this look a little bit prettier. So do that, and then we'll go ahead and open this guy up, do our getters and setters, go ahead and do our toString. We'll add everything 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And finally, we'll go ahead and generate hashcode and equals with everything in it as well. And there we go. So that is that guy all set up. And I wanted to get this set up first because we're going to use the values inside of it to set up our message. So let's go back into our message service and get that wrapped up. So now we can go ahead and try to import this. So let's go ahead and come over here, import that. That's good to go. So now we're going to go ahead and set up our message. So message is equal to new message, like a type. And inside of our message constructor, we'll say DTO.getType. And I guess I called it message type. I meant to just call it type. It doesn't really matter. DTO.getSentBy. We'll say DTO.getConversation. And this one might just be called, oh, I just typoed getConversation. And then finally, DTO.getText. Like so. So that is our simple message. Finally, we'll go ahead and return our message repository.create not create dot save, and then go ahead and pass in that message. So this is our very simple create message. This should allow us to go ahead and store a message on the database, no problem. So now the final thing that we need to go ahead and do is set up the message controller to be able to send the data over and get this working. So let's go ahead and say space JC once again, go ahead and put this inside of our controllers. Go ahead and say message controller, like so. And we'll go ahead and put at rest controller and at request mapping, and here we're just going to go ahead and go slash, and this is going to be message. Inside here all we need is a private final message service. Go ahead and call this message service, and we'll go ahead and say at autowired and public message controller, pass in our message service, and this dot message service is equal to message service. So right now all we're gonna do is a post mapping, and we're gonna set it up for the future, but it should still work. So value equal to slash, and then we're gonna go ahead and say consumes equal to media type, and this is gonna come from our Spring framework to http dot application underscore JSON underscore value, and then we're also going to go ahead and say media type dot multi-part file. Actually it's form data value, and then that's good to go. We'll have a public message send message, and this is going to have at request and part. We're setting this up just like our post, except I'm doing it all in one instead of splitting into two, just to make our lives a little bit easier. This will be message payload, like so. And then we're also going to have string and message payload. And then we're going to have at request part. And this is going to be our image. And this will be a list of multi-part files. So multi-part file, like so. Call this image, because we're really only going to be passing one at a time for this one. And here it's going to return message service dot create message, and then we'll go ahead and add in the message payload, maybe if I could type, and the image. So now the thing is, we have to set it up to actually send this in Postman, and it's kind of a pain. So I'll show you guys how to set this up, and hopefully everything is running and good to go. So that's something else we should probably check in on before I get too ahead of myself here. So let's first check the application console and make sure everything's running properly. So it looks like it restarted, so that's probably good. So let's just double check this, make sure everything's looking good. Okay, it started. Let's just double check our database. So I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect, because this is probably some old code here from whenever I was setting everything up. Let's go and connect. That's fine. Go and close out of all this stuff. I just want to make sure that the things that we changed are actually changed. So primarily what we need to go ahead and look at, if we go into schemas, public tables, and then the thing that I want to look at is conversations. So conversations now is a name and a picture, so it looks good. We also want to go ahead and see message. So message has an ID, an image, text, the type, when it was sent, the ID, and who it was sent by. And we also have the message seen by. So everything is looking pretty good. The only thing we didn't look at was users, and users now has a create timestamp. Obviously they're still very close to one another, but if you can imagine, whenever different people sign up, whatnot, it'll be different. So that's good to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up an online tool to go ahead and help us set up some JSON. That way I can go ahead and copy and paste it into Postman properly. All right, the final thing we need to do is go ahead and set up a JSON. So let's go ahead and set up the JSON object. So this is going to need a type, which is going to be, in our case, message. This is going to need sent by. So sent by. So here we're going to go ahead and cheat a little bit. We're going to set up a array here, or an object here, user ID, and we're going to go ahead and set it up as ourselves for now. Then we go on a conversation. So this is where things get interesting. So whenever we're working on the front end, I know this is kind of small. I don't know if I can zoom in any. I don't know if we can make the font any bigger on this, because I don't really want to make this too big. Let me see if I can make this, the font, bigger. We can't, unfortunately. I don't want to zoom in too much. I'll just do this, I guess, and zoom back out later. So conversation, we need a couple things. We need the ID, and we also need the conversation user, so that way the logic will work later on. So we're going to go ahead and say conversation ID, and this will be 1. And again, we need to set up this conversation, obviously. Then we also need conversation, and users. So this is going to be an array of users. So here we need the user ID and the username. So I'm going to set up a conversation between me and Rick. So I'm going to say user ID and 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and say username is going to be Rick Sanchez. Like so. Maybe. And then outside of this user object, we're going to go ahead and say user ID again. And this will be 5. That is me. We'll say user name will be unknown coder. And then outside this array, we only need like one more thing to make this work, I believe. We just need our text. So we're going to go ahead and say text will be test. And then finally, we will add our GIF URL, which is just going to be null. So GIF URL and null. So this is the object string. I'm going to go ahead and add this all onto one line, or as close to one line as I can get it here, because what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to paste this entire thing more or less as a string inside of Postman. So that is like that. Now we can go ahead and copy this. Let's go into Postman, and I set up a post to /message. So the way this is going to work, we have form data just like our post with media. So the text is going to go ahead and be a message payload. We're going to go ahead and paste in the message payload. This took me way too long to figure out what was going on, and honestly I still messed up because I know this is really small. This guy actually needs to be outside of this object, otherwise it would have been debugging, but there we go. And then the file, we'll go ahead and work on selecting next episode. So let's go ahead and try to create just a simple conversation between me and Rick. We'll go ahead and run this. We're a conversation, don't need conversation messages or anything yet. We'll go ahead and run this. Fingers crossed I set this up, otherwise I might have to undo and get the other one back. We got a 200, which means that I think it failed, unfortunately. Let me just double check the console. Yes, let's see what we broke. Not marked as ignorable, 5 known properties, unrecognized field type. So, okay, I messed up. This is supposed to be type, but I put it in as message type. So that is easy enough to fix. So here in type, we can go ahead and say message type instead, and let's go ahead and try to send it again. Okay, now what broke? So now it is complaining about unrecognized field, conversation users, known property, conversation picture, conversation message, conversation users, conversation ID, conversation name, and it looks like I just spelled conversation users wrong. Let's go ahead and fix that as well. Of course I did. Conversation users, maybe 3rd time's the charm. There we go. So now we have a message that came back, was created by myself, although I do not see unknown coder for username. So that is not great. So we need to make sure that this gets set properly. So username, unknown coder. I don't know where the username went to here, but it should have been in there. I'll do some double checking in between episodes. It's still created, so that's okay. The issue is going to be whenever we try to sort, I think, or something. There's something that'll go wrong if we don't have the username. I don't remember exactly what it is. I don't know if although you know what, we might not have implemented what's going to break. So it's probably okay for now. Next episode, it'll matter, but I'm not sure why it's not pulling in the username. So that's something that I might want to be concerned about. But this is good. Let's go ahead and hop into the database and just make sure we have this in there. If we go into our this is messages. We can see we have our message. We don't have an image. We can see that. We can see who sent it. We can also see this. So the only reason that this message, this username null is even an issue is because we're cheating and not passing the entire user. This is not going to be an issue whenever we're actually working on the front end because we're going to go ahead and pass in the entire user anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. As always, if you guys do want to see where we started from absolute scratch to get to the point we are now, there's a playlist that I'll go ahead and link in the outro screen that you can go and click on and see all of that. But as always, guys, this has been Ethan Uncoder. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.